Well, hey there. How you doing? You ready to do some math? Are you ready to do some math? Because I'm ready to do some math.
Hey guys, that's my pencil pouch. We're talking about decimals still and how decimals and fractions are very similar. Very related because decimals are in tenths, fractions are in tenths. Decimals are in hundredths, fractions are in hundredths. That's as far as I've gotten so far. So if you look at a sheet like this, you can see that's the whole. That's the big old one. And then we have the one separated into tenths, and we have it separated into hundredths. So notice how the one could be called 10 tenths, or the one could be called 100 100ths. It just means you got the whole thing, right? We did that in fractions. It's like the AKAs. As long as you got the whole thing, it's a whole, it's one. So that leads me to this. 10 tenths, just one. 100 100ths, just one. But what about 10 hundredths? Well, let's see, that's a tenth. And inside of a tenth, you have 10 hundredths. So notice how 1/10 is the same as 10 hundredths. So 10 hundredths just equals a 10. And we're going to be talking about that today and how it relates to money. So what that's going to be like is like a dime is the same as 10 pennies. A dime is 1/10 of a dollar. 10 pennies are 10 hundredths of a dollar. So 2 dimes or 2 tenths is equal how many hundredths? Well, 2 dimes is the same as how many pennies? It's 20 cents. So 2 dimes, 2 tenths is 20 hundredths. So we're going to look at some things like this. You see 2 hundredths. Oh, the glare. Stop glaring me. 2 hundredths. That's going to be what in decimals? Well, it's going to be 0.2? No, because it's 2 in the hundredth spot. So it's going to be 0.02. So it's going to be like that. I'm going to have to move this. Sorry about that. Get a little further away. It's going to be 0.02. What about 20 hundredths? Oh, 20 hundredths is kind of like how many tenths? Remember 20 cents would be like 2 dimes? So if you see something like that, and you see 2 zeros at the end, you can just cross out each zero. You don't need all that stuff because 20 hundredths is the same as 2 tenths. 20 cents, same as 2 dimes. So if you're looking at 2 tenths, that's just going to be 0. How many tenths? 2. So 2 in the tenth spot. Just like that. What about this one? 67 hundredths. It's going to be 0 point something, right? Because it's less than 1. So it's going to be 0.67. The 7 is going to be in the hundredth spot. So if you see, so it's going to be 0.67. So if you see that there are 2 digits like that, 67 is 2 digits, you know you've got a 10 spot and a hundredth spot. Tenths and hundredths. So you know there's going to be something in the hundredth spot, right? The 6 just goes right in the first spot, and then the 7. So 67 hundredths is 0.67, or 67 hundredths, hundredth spot. So just be kind of on the lookout for the hundredth spot. Oh wait, check it out. That 7's in the hundredth spot. 67 hundredths is 0.67, and the number ends in the hundredth spot. So if you see 2 digits on top of 100 like that, 67, you know 10th spot, 100th spot, it's going to be something in the 100th spot. What about something like that? Ooh, that looks a little trickier, doesn't it? 1 and 8 hundredths. Well, it's going to be 1 point something, right? Because it's over 1. We got a 1. 1, so it's 1 point something. 1 point what, though? Would it just be 1.8? I don't think so, because notice how it's not 8 tenths, it's 8 hundredths. So there's nothing in the 10th spot there. It's not like, it's not 1 and 38 hundredths, it's 1 and 8. So that means you got to put the 0 there to show, you know what, we don't have any tenths. We just have 8 hundredths. There's hundreds down here, hundredths. 8 hundredths. So we need to have the 8 in the hundredth spot. How many hundredths do we have? We've got 8. 8 goes in the hundredth spot. 8. Here comes another one, very similar. 1 and 7 tenths. Oh, this one's in the 10th spot. So it's going to be 1.7 in the 10th spot. It's going to look like what? 1 point, and then you put the 7 in the 10th spot. How did you write that? Did you write it like this? 1 point, because there's a decimal, and 7 tenths is 7 tenths. 7 in the 10th spot. Just like 8 hundredths is 8 hundredths in the 100th spot. Let's keep going. 2 and 15 hundredths. Well, how many holes do we have? We've got 2. So you write a 2 right there. And then, how many hundredths do we have? Well, it says 15 hundredths, right? So you got to write 15 in the 100th spot. So it's going to be 2 and 15 in the 100th spot. Notice how we've got 2 digits. 1's in the 10th spot, 5's in the 100th spot. 1's in the 10th spot, 5's in the 100th spot. How many hundredths do we have? We've got 15 hundredths. 15 hundredths. We've got one last one here. 25 and 40 hundredths. So how many holes? Well, 25, right? So 25 point something. 25. And here's what you could do. I'm just going to tell you. You could just write 25 and see how it's 40 hundredths? 25 and 40 hundredths. But what they're telling you too is that that's the same thing. I'm sorry. I just did it. I just wrote the same thing twice. That's what I meant to write. 25 and 40 hundredths. 40. The last one's in the hundredth spot. But remember from our vocabulary video, if you just have a bunch of zeros going on forever, that means the same thing. So 25 and 40 hundredths is the same as 25 and 4 tenths. So I might just erase that. In fact, that's kind of what they want you to do today. Just think about how that's the same thing. Just like 25 and 40 pennies is the same as 25 and 4 dimes. 25 and 40 hundredths is the same as 25 and 4 tenths. But if you just write 25 and 40 hundredths like this, people are going to know what you mean. So if that's easier, it's okay. 25, 40 hundredths. Or you could just get rid of the 0 and say 25 and 4 tenths. Because it's the same thing. 4 dimes is the same as 40 pennies.